Commonly known as the Ralph Nader of the skincare industry, Dr. Fayne Frey is a New York-based, Ivy League trained, board-certified dermatologist where she specializes in the diagnosis and treatment of skin cancer, and a skincare consultant as a nationally recognized expert in the effectiveness and formulation of over-the-counter skincare products. She's a contributor to and on the editorial board of both 50 Plus Today, a top-rated online senior lifestyle magazine, and The Doctor Weighs In, one of the leading online resources for trusted health and wellness information. Dr. Frey is a frequent speaker in many venues where she captivates audiences with her wry observations regarding the skincare industry. She has consulted for numerous media outlets, including NBC, USA Today, and the Huffington Post, and has also shared her expertise on both cable and major TV outlets. Dr. Frey is also the founder of FreyFace.com, an educational skincare information and product selection service website that clarifies and simplifies the overwhelming choice of effective, safe, and affordable products encountered in the skincare aisles. Dr. Frey is a graduate of Boston University, summa cum laude with distinction, a member of Phi Beta Kappa, and a graduate of the Weill Cornell Medical College. She's also a fellow of both the American Academy of Dermatology and the American Society for Dermatologic Surgery. In her spare time, you might find her running, playing piano, reading, or eating M&Ms. Dr. Frey lives in Rockland County, New York, with her husband and has 4 grown children. Dr. Fayne Frey, good to have you on the Rogue Dermatologist podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So Dr. Fayne Frey actually wrote an incredibly interesting book called Skincare Hoax, which I read that was published last year and got plenty of accolades and made a lot of noise. And we're here to discuss this book and some of the concepts and aspects of the skincare culture and how we can understand them better to our advantage. So again, welcome to the podcast. And right off the bat, I wanted to ask you, so one of the things that I found amazing is that the book starts with a question in chapter 1. Are you being served or sold? Give me your take on that.
I haven't figured it out yet. Are you being served or sold? I think a little of both. It's a great industry. Listen, I love the skincare industry. I'm not going to sit here and villainize it, but it's a great industry that makes great products. But the marketing, in my opinion, has gone mad. And we have a consumer base that doesn't understand the ingredients. So it's a blind item. And what's in these products, in my opinion, is the most important information, on any particular skincare product. You have a blind item. Ingredients aren't known to the consumer, right? Who knows triethanolamine and isopropyl myristate and propylene glycol? So the skincare company has a field day with marketing, and it's getting us all to buy products at a tune of probably $500 billion a year globally.
And that is pretty incredible. And what would you say are your top pet peeves about the industry regarding those products that I think we could agree a lot of them are unnecessary, but maybe a little bit more broadly than that?
I guess, look, again, I think they make good products. I think my pet peeve is I think there's a little transparency in the marketing. Mm-hmm. And they take advantage of the fact that the consumer doesn't understand what's in the product. And they take advantage of the insecurity of that. I don't know if I can blame the skincare industry for it. Maybe they're just giving to a consumer base that wants the information. When you asked about being served or sold, I think it's both. It's a consumer-driven industry. The consumer is asking for these products. They want these products. With that being said, the consumers are not educated. Again, they don't understand what's in these products. They don't understand the testing or the lack thereof of these products. Mm-hmm. So we've created a culture, an industry around skincare that is enormous, that is really serving the needs of the consumer. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I'd like to see more transparency in the skincare industry.
Oh, for sure. Yes. I think the broad public education would be something to work on and have people more informed as far as what they're putting on their skin
And before that, even, I'd say maybe consider why it is that they're doing what they're doing. I think there's a lot of ignorance regarding what is really needed to take care of the basic needs of the skin. Wouldn't you agree?
I absolutely agree. But look, we're a capitalistic society. This is one of the downsides of capitalism when the consumer base doesn't understand the product. But in my opinion, we need much less than the industry is telling us we need. So that's my opinion. If you ask anybody over 80 years of age what shampoo they used when they were a kid, they'll likely tell you they don't remember. And the reason they don't remember is because in this country, shampoo wasn't even a household staple until the late 50s, early 60s. Right. So what happened? Did some copywriter come up with the idea that we need shampoo? So now everybody needs shampoo, and we need to condition, and we need to lather and rinse and repeat. Like, there's science behind this. Who says you have to lather, rinse, and then repeat? But it goes through the product twice as fast. So these are the kinds of things that the industry takes advantage of. And again, the consumer doesn't understand that.
No, I completely agree with you. You're preaching to the choir. And what's interesting is you were talking about the invention of shampoo out of whole cloth, practically. And there's a very interesting concept that I found in researching my own book, which is called the Pepsodent effect. And you and I have discussed it previously, where this marketing genius called Klotzy Hopkins wanted to help the struggling Pepsodent toothpaste company. Mm-hmm. And infuse their products with some essential oils that would make people's gums tingle, feeling that they're getting some traction or some health benefit for brushing their teeth. And their sales took off like gonzo, and they dominated the American market for many decades after that, until the competitors caught on and started doing the same thing. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in skincare, product design, commercial promotion and advertisement, as well as prescriptions that are a result of those commercials, is a lot of needs that are made out of whole cloth. And then the indications of health benefits of these products are also, a lot of them have to do with really ingraining those habits of using these products rather than really minding the health benefit that they provide.
Sure, that was the addition of menthol. It tingled, and the consumer thought that tingle equated to efficacy, and there was no correlation. That's I think where you're going. Look, the same is true with cleansing in general. Foaming, yes. They have ingredients to foam. There's no benefit to a foaming cleanser. It doesn't clean any better. It just it might improve the user experience. Mm-hmm. The consumer thinks because it foams, it's cleaning better. Right. But that in essence is just not the case.
No, it is not. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in the skincare industry are sort of quasi Pepsodent effects, where you were talking about the foaming, which is sort of creates the impression that you're doing something. There are things that go beyond that actually create a sensation on the skin, much like the irritation that those spearmint or peppermint essential oils do. I mean, for instance, the scrubs, the microbead ilk and other ingredients that are incorporated to create that tightness or that freshness, sensation of freshness, or giving your skin a wake-up call is a pretty common phrase in the industry. And those are akin to irritating the skin. And yet people do these things wholly believing that they're getting some sort of a health benefit by doing these things.
Yeah, correct. Well, that whole idea of exfoliating, there's very little science that shows exfoliating at all is beneficial. So, as you know, the surface of the skin is 20 dead layers. The skin isn't dead, but the top 20 layers are. They're functional, as you know, but they're not dead. But those 20 layers are the exact layers that actually help us maintain hydration. So why you'd want to remove those, in my opinion, it makes absolutely no sense. But again, it feels softer. The consumer likes how it feels, and they equate, like you said, certain sensations to benefit. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes those irritating effects are harmful.
Oh, absolutely. And not only are they harmful, but they're also, in my opinion, create a sales funnel for another category of products, and that would be your so-called moisturizers. Mm-hmm. And I remember your chapter about moisturizers. So give us the gist about moisturizers. Are they really moisturizing, or are they doing something else?
Well, I always talk about moisturizers because most consumers think moisturizers add water to the skin.
Hmm.
Moisturizers, it's like koala bears. They're not really bears, and jellyfish aren't really fish. I always joke.
Hmm.
Moisturizers don't add water to the skin. Moisturizers are a concoction of ingredients that help your skin maintain its own hydration. And it's done, as you know, with several types of ingredients. The overwhelming majority of moisturizers on the market are water-based. And inside that water are ingredients called humectants, which are ingredients like glycerin or hyaluronic acid, which is a hot topic right now,
Hmm.
hold on to water. And then there are occlusives or fats, which sit on the skin and create a film so that your water in your skin can't evaporate and that water can't enter the skin either. Look, skin is an organ and it does function best. And I think we have all kinds of science to show this functions best when it's hydrated. So I'm not opposed to moisturizers, but you moisturize when you need to moisturize. So when the skin is dry and flaky, you moisturize. It optimizes skin function. In July, when it's really humid in New York, I don't moisturize. I don't need to. In the
Yes.
winter, when it's really dry, I want my skin to function optimally. Remember, your skin's a barrier, right? It protects from the outside world. It protects us from microorganisms, bacteria, fungus, mold, allergens, ultraviolet light. It will function best if it's hydrated. So I'm not opposed to a moisturizer if and when you need one. Now, to do a product, like you said, to use an exfoliant or a cleanser that is harsh, that removes the exact lipids and proteins your skin needs to create hydrated skin, and you create this dryness effect, and then the answer is to then apply a moisturizer. Yeah, that makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
But which is why I don't necessarily recommend the exfoliating and the facials and the masks and all those
Right.
fun procedures that people seem to like to just have a good time.
Right, right. I actually call it the skincare fireman arson. I think that's pretty much what it is. And frankly, I can't say that I know that it's intentional or not, but the trajectory certainly exists. You use one set of products or one category of products, you create the need for a second, and the same company or the same manufacturer may benefit from the sales of both. And they encourage the sales of the first and
Sure.
then the latter to make up for the damage that was done with the first. So it's an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, well, you talk about that 10 step, I think it's a Korean kind of step where you have to wash with an oil-based cleanser. And
Right.
if that doesn't work, then you need the water-based cleanser. In my opinion, if you need more than one cleanser, you use the wrong cleanser. Now you've stripped everything, or no, you have a residue, so you need a toner. But now
Mm-hmm.
you got to, you've stripped everything, so now you're going to need some moisturizer. So,
Right.
in the same vein, it's silly. In my opinion, you just don't need all those things.
Completely. And what's really interesting about what you just laid out is the fact that there is a certain prescription in the description of how to use these products. And you were talking earlier about how you don't necessarily need a moisturizer in New York around a certain time of year, and how you would need a moisturizer possibly if your skin requires it at a different time of year. And I think what you're really driving at is you really need to understand your own basic personal needs before you step to it and take care of them, and instead of doing things automatically.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yuval, we talk about this all the time as physicians. The skin is an organ, and if you want healthy skin, shy of winning the genetic lottery, which
Mm-hmm.
hopefully if you did, God bless. But um, a healthy organ, any organ, parallels a healthy body. And it's not the sexy answer, but this is what people need to understand. The healthiest of skin is gotten by the healthiest of bodies, and that is gotten by exercise and a good diet and nights of sleep. And there's science to show all that. I always add in laughter because I really think laughter is good for you. Although I have to be honest, full transparency, I have no science to prove that whatsoever. But I firmly believe it. But it's not the quick fix. It's not the answer that people want to hear. It's not a syringe. It's not a pill. But that is the right answer. And
Yeah.
if you do that, I think the need for all these ancillary skincare products really becomes minimum.
Yes, absolutely. And regarding the science thing, it's so interesting. I think it's kind of like beating a dead horse. So science may actually get you a lot of the facts and may actually help you understand a lot of the mechanics behind what's going on. But the biology of what we're dealing with here, the complexity of what we're dealing with here, I think is so enormous that science can give us a little glimpse into what's going on. But then again, you really have to rely eventually on common sense and wisdom to make sense of things. Even if the science is not there to back you up, sure, there are things that certainly work consistently across the board, and there are things that do not work. So being in poor health and doing things that set you back health-wise, internally and externally, I think are things that are pretty clear, and it's really important to emphasize that.
Absolutely. Look, we have science, but science is far from perfect. There's no doubt in my mind. In some studies, you can't even find good double-blinded studies that are reproducible, which is what good science is. So you make a great point. You know, people ask me about ingredients all the time, and they'll test 100% of the ingredient. Well, we're not using it at 100%. And what happens to that ingredient when you mix it with ingredient B or ingredient D? And, you know, these chemicals, you know, they talk to each other. So
they do.
And no one's going to put money into testing all these combinations and permutations. So like you said, a lot of times you have to use your own best judgment or stop using the products if you don't know, you know, stop using so many.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what's interesting is that you were talking about testing these ingredients or testing these products. Again, the testing is or the question can be so complex eventually that there's only so much time, money, and space for people to conduct their research on. And that research will have been conducted on the test group, the test subjects, not on the person using it in the field. So again, the recommendations and the deductions that people make, those are taken from the petri dish and sometimes from a very small cohort of people in the initial experiment, if there's one to begin with, and then they blow it up and impose it on the rest of the population, and that could be very confusing and misleading.
Oh yeah, we talk about that all the time. You take a testing in the lab and you extrapolate and you say, well, therefore in skincare it must do the same. So yes. I have an example. You've heard of the Bugatti, that fastest race car in the world, Super Chevron.
Of course, love Bugattis.
Right, you take it on a strip, on an airline strip or a racetrack, and you put that pedal to the metal as fast as you can, and you determine it's the fastest car in the world, and you buy this car for $3 million. And you take it home with you, and you have to now go from your home to the store, and you have to heed traffic lights, and you have to slow down because there's a stop sign, and you have to stop because it's a 30-mile-an-hour limit, and you see a kid on the bike, and then, of course, there are pedestrians, and you're taking this $3 million fastest car in the world to the store, and when you heed usual and customary conditions, you realize you got to the store in the same speed that you would have if you took your Toyota. So despite the fact in a controlled setting, it's the fastest car in the world, when you take it home and use it as you would normally use it, it is not the fastest car in the world anymore. And there are so many instances where that's the case in science. They'll take an ingredient and they'll test it in the lab and it shows, you know, X, Y, and Z. The peptides, for example, they put them in petri dishes and they see the effects on cells, live cells.
Yes.
And then they put this peptide at 0.02%, just enough to have it in the product. And they put it in a cream with preservative and they stick it on the skin and they extrapolate that it's going to penetrate the 20 layers of dead skin, the other 40 layers of viable epidermis. It's going to pass through a basement membrane in a high enough concentration to make an impact in the dermis where those live cells are living. It just doesn't happen like that.
No.
So this is a perfect example where, you know, again, lab science is great, but that doesn't mean you can extrapolate and put it on in a skincare product and say it's effective. It just doesn't work like that. But the consumer is not aware of this.
No. And what's interesting is I think a lot of the times I kind of wonder if the people formulating these products are fully aware of what you're discussing now, which is an amazing understanding of biology. It is not just an open and closed door. You have so many barriers and so many processes from point A to point B. You can't really predict that it's so chaotic, or not chaotic necessarily, but the complexity, as I keep mentioning, is so enormous. So it's impossible to think that you can actually predict how a molecule you apply to the surface of the skin is going to fare eventually and what benefit it'll provide for the user. And what's interesting is I noticed that in your book, you went into a lot of these, what I call snake oils. And you mentioned these molecules that are found in a lab through very small studies, and then they throw them in the product at just the right amount to include it in the ingredient list. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are. You mentioned hyaluronic acid in your book. What are your thoughts about hyaluronic acid?
Well, look, it's a mucopolysaccharide sugar molecule. We know it's a huge component of soft tissue in our body. So it's a natural constituent in the body. Great. But it's a huge molecule. The average kilodaltons is between probably 80 and 100,000. Now,
Yes.
it's got to be 500 kilodaltons if we're talking science to penetrate into the skin. So this molecule is so large, it couldn't penetrate the epidermis if it wanted to. It would be like getting a Mack truck through your door. It's not happening. But with that being said, a good moisturizer does have a humectant in it, which is an ingredient that holds on to water.
Sure.
And hyaluronic acid happens to be a good product because it holds on to water. So as far as an ingredient in a well-formulated moisturizer, it's a fine ingredient. Do keep in mind the same vial of hyaluronic acid that costs $200, you could get the same effect in glycerin that costs $2. So there's no really reason to use hyaluronic acid except that it's the hot ingredient du jour. The media puts out these hot ingredients. So, this is another example of a ingredient that is a natural constituent of the skin that is utilized in skincare and then marketed that it's part of your skin. Look at ceramides is no different. So ceramides is part of the fat that's in the top layer of skin that keeps us waterproof. And yes, there are ceramides. It's great. But if you put ceramides on the surface of the skin, that doesn't mean it's going to penetrate and incorporate into the skin. It's like, that pink fiberglass that's in your home that insulates your home. It's very effective when it's between your walls. But if you take that pink fiberglass and stick it on the roof of your house and then say, geez, we got fiberglass on the roof of your house, it's really what's keeping your house insulated. It's not going to do anything.
Of course.
Again, the consumer's not aware of this. These are the marketing tactics that these companies can use because the consumer is not aware of the biology and the complexity of skin that you and I are aware of.
Yes, there's obviously a time and a place for everything, and you need to know what the use is or what the application is for anything that you're using. And what's interesting is regarding the ceramides, this is one of my biggest pet peeves with the skincare industry is, for instance, a company like CeraVe, whose claim to fame, whose dark horse ingredient is ceramides, and they advertise it as such as their products containing ceramides. And then when you turn the package around, ceramides are summarily found under the inactive ingredient list, where their active ingredient is actually petrolatum. So it's a very weird dichotomy there to advertise something as your dark horse and then stick it in the inactive ingredient list. So they actually know better than to claim that they're active.
Right. Matter of fact, ceramides a lot of times is listed in the ingredient listing under the 1% line. So as you know, that all ingredients are listed by the highest concentration to the lowest concentration until 1%. At 1%, they can list them in any order. And oftentimes the ceramides are listed below the 1% line. They're just listed because they have to satisfy the claim of the front label that there's ceramides in there. Remember, they're expensive. Remember, these companies, this is a business. They need to profit.
Yes.
And they need to attest to their shareholders. So they have to have ceramides in there. So if I come along and do chromatography, I have to prove there's ceramides in there if they say so. But they just have to be enough ceramides in there to satisfy that claim. So oftentimes it is in there. It's just the last listed ingredient.
Yes. And isn't it amazing that you were saying that those are companies, they need to make money. And by the way, that is what they're in business for. They're not in the business for charity. They're not in the business for world peace. They're in the business of making money, which is exactly what companies are for. What's amazing is that they include all those ingredients that are not necessarily working for the consumer, but the consumer does pay a premium for those ingredients just for the feel good element or for the marketing of it, which is another very interesting element of the skincare industry.
Unfortunately, you are absolutely right. It's a business. They have to attest to their shareholders. We have consumers who don't understand any of this, the ingredient listing. I don't sell anything. I don't work for a skincare company. That's why I wrote the book, because nobody is advocating for the consumer. So I felt it was important to get a lot of this information out there.
Yes. Now, I'm sure that, as all of us do, you probably have some stories from the front, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a story about how you were able to help someone who came to you in one of those situations where they were using a skincare product or a set of skincare products that were not necessarily doing the trick, and how were you able to turn that around?
Well, look, like I said to you, the skin is an organ, and when it's dry, it needs to be moisturized. So I'm not opposed to using a moisturizer, but I had a patient who came into the office, and she was using a high-end moisturizer that I think was running about $300 an ounce. That's $4,800 a pound. Wow. Now, I can't think of any perishable I'd even consider spending $4,800 a pound on. The interesting thing about this product was the first 6 ingredients, which constitutes about 97% of that product. 5 of the 6 ingredients were found in an over-the-counter body lotion for $8 a pound. I'm comparing $4,800 a pound to $8 a pound. And the woman says, I don't have time. I don't have money. I said, look, try this one and not this one. She needed a moisturizer. She got great results from using the cheaper one and just saved herself a lot of money. So this is a perfect example. We have 2 products. Now that more expensive product did have all kinds of fancy oils in the 1% line to make it smell nice. And I'm sure the packaging was beautiful. But when it came to the skin health, again, as a physician, I emphasize wellness over beauty. Nothing against beauty, but my passion is wellness. I was able to direct her to a very similar, if not almost identical product for $8 a pound versus the $4,800 a pound item she was using. So that's the kind of thing that I think a little education saves you a lot of time, energy, and money.
It sure does. And what I really loved about your book is how you made the comparison between body specialty or body specific products, and you show how these body specific products are not so body specific, except for by designation, maybe. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, look, if you're a company, you want shelf space and you want market share, and you'll do what you can to get it. So you'll make a product and you'll put it on, and it could be a good product. Again, I test some of these; they test well. Put it on the main aisle, and then you'll slap the word baby on it and put it in the baby section. And you'll put hand cream on it. And this was an incident that happened. I was very familiar with a very name brand body lotion and baby body lotion with the same ingredient listing. And the drug rep comes into my office and says, we have a new product. We have a new hand cream. And I looked at the hand cream, and I looked at her, and I looked down at the ingredient listing, and I looked back at her, and she says, I know, it's the same. So here's an example of a body lotion for baby, and a hand cream that was all in different areas of the shelves for market share. And that didn't bother me so much. I understand business. That's okay. But what bothered me was the lotions had one price and the hand cream was 40% higher. Now, you and I know as dermatologists, sometimes we see patients with hand eczema and we recommend a hand cream. Keep your hands occluded. And my patient of mine goes out and buys that cream. I'd be annoyed because they're paying 40% more when they could have bought the lotion that was a fraction of the price. And that really bothered me. And that's the aspect of the skincare industry that I'm not fond of. If you want market share, I'm okay with that. But don't be charging people higher because they're going to use it in a different body part. Your body parts don't know the difference. We joke about night creams. Honestly, it's the same ingredients. There's no sunscreen filters in them, and they might be a little thicker. But, if you make a product in Seoul, Korea, Yuval, and you fly it across the Pacific and it lands here in New York, it's 13 hours later. You think it's throwing off that hand cream? Right? If you work the night shift, do you need a day cream? I mean, it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. So, the night cream and the eye cream, I always joke with the eye cream. If you shouldn't put a product here, you shouldn't be putting it here, right? If you're high on the cheekbone, a facial moisturizer will suffice. And as I wrote in the book, I gave an example of a facial moisturizer that has the same ingredient listing as the eye cream. For a third of the price. So again, this is a way to get market share. And that's the aspect of transparency I'm not fond of. But that's why we're here, educating, mindful consumers.
Exactly. And I really think that probably the beginning of making sense of this and actually helping the situation along is education, which is what you're so big on, which is terrific. Really educate the public, let them know what they're walking into so they can make their own minds up. And they said it's okay if they want to buy the expensive premium face cream or eye cream or what have you. Good for them. I mean, let them go at it. But if they can actually help themselves recognize the differences between different products and what they're good for, I think all more power to them.
Absolutely. And you know what? If you can afford the $500 cream and you like how it looks on your vanity, you have every right to buy that cream. But just know that cream is not going to make your skin healthier than the less expensive one. And I'll tell you this, after testing products for decades, there is no correlation between what you pay for a product and how well it works. I can guarantee you that.
Absolutely. It's pretty incredible that the cheapest product on the market probably is white petroleum jelly, which I know you're a big fan of. I certainly am. And it's amazing what this product can do. And you mentioned in your book that this is this is the best conclusive that we know of, which is terrific. And all, some people are bothered by the greasiness of it. And in my experience, really teaching people how to use it appropriately makes a world of difference. Because if they're going to use a drop size amount and apply it evenly over an entire limb, they're going to spread it out until it no longer spreads. No longer they get rid of the residue. There's nothing staining their clothes or their sheets, and they're happy campers. And the thing is, I think that there's a conceptual barrier to get over with a lot of us, because we've been doing the same thing of our entire lives. We've been brought up with certain beliefs, and getting over that belief hump, I think, is probably one of the major challenges there.
I think we need to ask people to keep an open mind. It is true we have been brainwashed for years. Look, my mother never said to me, "You're nothing unless you're using a vitamin C serum." I mean, she just never said that to me. And about petrolatum, petroleum jelly it prevents the most water loss from the skin. We know this from science. It's the negative control used in patch testing because almost nobody's allergic to it. I'm talking cosmetic grade petroleum jelly, not industrial use. I'm talking cosmetic grade, which is pure and healthy stuff. It is greasy, unfortunately, which is it ruins the user experience, but it is by far the most versatile product on the market. Again, you can use it for chafed noses, lip balm, earrings if you have to put them in and you get stuck, dry cuticles on your nails, rough elbows, rough knees. There's just so many purposes. You can use it as a moisturizer, again, if you can get it on thinly enough. And when you formulate good moisturizers, the overwhelming majority of them use petrolatum. But to, again, make it a better user experience, they might add in a silicone derivative like dimethicone or cyclomethicone so that they don't have to use as much, so that it does improve the user experience. And yes, that's something, in my opinion, you can, petrolatum's, it's a great product to have, and you can buy a pound of it for $5.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very affordable.
Yeah. Isn't that incredible? And by the way, another use that I found about recently is makeup remover. You can actually remove makeup with a little bit of petroleum jelly. In fact, some makeup removers that are designed, I found a makeup remover on this bogus blog on some magazine that shall remain unnamed, where the product that was designed for the elderly was a petroleum jelly based product. It had a number of other ingredients, going to throw it in there, but the workhorse was petroleum jelly. And I thought to myself, yeah, it has enough traction. You can definitely wipe the makeup away with that. And then you're left with a layer of moisturizer when all is said and done. So brilliant.
Well, that's another product we joke about. Like, what's a makeup remover? It's another product to buy. I mean,
yes,
water is a makeup remover.
Yes.
Petrolatum jelly is makeup remover. You can use chocolate milk if you want it. I mean, you can use anything that removes makeup. You just need a solvent.
Sure.
There's no defined makeup remover. It's just another product that we teach women they need to purchase when they don't need to purchase a separate makeup remover.
Right.
So that just goes to the more is better. You don't have to buy a product for every purpose is the point. You can minimize what you get, because a lot of products, like you said, petroleum jelly is one, can be used for lots of things.
Absolutely. And that painting by the numbers approach, where you get a product for each step or each line, is really, well, it's a marketing strategy. I think it's a great marketing strategy for creating those needs, sometimes out of whole cloth, like we discussed at the beginning of the conversation. But a lot of them, as you said, can be repurposed and can be used for multiple uses. The face cream can be used all over. The hand cream can be used all over. The petroleum jelly can be used all over, and they can have multiple purposes or multiple functions.
Yeah, we buy a lot. It's a big industry. Marketing is powerful. Yes. And the consumer is not educated, and it's a bad combination. And we're driven by a cultural definition of beauty that is tall, thin, and young.
Right.
That makes it even more complicated, because everybody wants to turn back the hands of time, where now we have all these anti-aging creams and anti-wrinkle creams. Remember, these are cosmetics.
Yes.
Which by law don't change the structure or function of anything. They can't by law. That's how it's designed. So again, we decrease the appearance of a fine line because it's a moisturizer, which temporarily improves the appearance of skin. But it doesn't get rid of the wrinkle. That's a drug claim. They don't say that. Again, this is just another way to, again, the combination of cultural influence, and we're all brainwashed, and we need to just educate, teach people the reality that they just don't need all this stuff. People are worried about chemistry. They're worried about chemicals. They're worried about exposure to chemicals.
Right.
They're worried about our planet. They're worried about our oceans.
Right.
And I have a real simple answer. Stop buying so much stuff.
Yes.
Stop using 5 products, 5 plastic bottles that wind up in our landfills and in our oceans. We just don't need all.
Absolutely. Yes.
But it is a mindset, and it is something, again, we're brainwashed, and you have to ask people to keep an open mind, because to no one's fault. They've been, we've all been inundated. I think Forbes says we see 4,000 to 10,000 messages a day that, regarding the necessity to purchase things. That's a lot of messaging.
Yes. Yes. And what's amazing is that when you think about it, so the manufacturers of cosmeceutical skincare products cannot make any claims, as it would fall under a medication or a drug. What's interesting, though, is that advent of social media, we actually get that subversion of that with users, either private users or chartered users who are paid to put out the word. They may claim whatever claim they want to make. Nobody's going to counter them, and the company's not going to be accountable for that or held accountable for such a claim. So anybody can make a claim. Whatever CeraVe healing ointment is the best anti-aging moisturizer out there, and if it's a private person, nobody can really do anything about it. The FDA is not going to come after CeraVe because they're not making a claim. So it's really important to parse what is declared by the company and what is declared by users you find on the online who are not identified as affiliated with the company.
Perhaps that is the case, but you use the word cosmeceutical. That is a made-up word, a marketing word that we use to imply there's a product that's going to act like a drug, but it's really a cosmetic.
Right.
The FDA doesn't recognize that term. It's either a cosmetic that doesn't intend to change anything, or it's a drug. There's no category of cosmeceutical. A cosmeceutical is any product that promises to have drug effects. They don't necessarily have to deliver because it's a cosmetic.
Right.
So the consumer, again, doesn't know this. And a lot of these anti-aging products are, cosmeceuticals. They add a number one of, whatever the hot ingredient is. I think snail mucin is in this week. That's a big one.
Oh.
And yeah, it'll blow your mind, some of the ingredients.
Yes.
Remember, these are cosmetics. These products by law are not designed to change the structure or function of your skin. That's the law. So again, this whole cosmeceutical, I credit Al Kligman. He was a genius scientist. He also, by the way, owned the patent of retinol and Retin-A, so you have to know his biases. But again, these are cosmetics. And again, there's a difference between a cosmetic, which intends to adorn, and a drug that intends to actually mitigate, treat, prevent disease, or change the structure or function of something. And the law is very clear by the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. This is not my opinion. This is how the laws were written.
Of course. Yes.
And these products are cosmetics, including cosmeceuticals. They're cosmetics for the most part.
Yes.
So that's, again, the intent of these products is through design, is not intending to change anything.
Yes, and which means that ultimately the leave-on category are largely probably in the category of moisturizers, if you want to call them that. So
correct, and that's been my experience.
Qualities. Yes,
how well they work depends on their ability to moisturize, which is the first 5 ingredients, not the last ingredient.
Yes. Which are snake oil and gratuitous additions usually for marketing
whatever it is
and
this
promotion.
Week. Yeah,
yes, whatever it is. Right, snake mucus. You said, which where did I get
snail
one of those?
mucin is the big
snail
one.
Mucin,
I'm seeing it a lot. Yes.
No kidding. That's that. Well, that's got to do something. I'm sure. That's very interesting.
It's not great for science as far as the product's concerned, but it's great for sales.
So that is for sure. What are some of the hot trends you've seen recently regarding some snake oil category ingredients that have caught your attention besides snail mucin?
I think the most recent one that blew me away is now moisturizers for women going through menopause.
Oh.
Like these ingredients know your hormonal stature, it's like, so this particular product somehow knows what your hormonal imbalance is. And again, it's a cosmetic, it's a moisturizer. And again, how well they work probably depends on its ability to moisturize. So that's the big one. Let's not exclude women. It's a topic that we don't like to talk about, menopause, but here's a way we can talk about it. And here's a market share that we haven't reached, that we can now reach menopausal women. And so that's kind of a hot recent one that I roll my eyes about.
Yes, that's very interesting. They created another category out of whole cloth, and they're marketing it to unsuspecting consumers, obviously believing that the kind scientists and lab coats in the lab just somehow miraculously compounded that exact recipe to fit the person's needs. Yes. What's amazing about these categories and these prescriptions that they're very generic, meaning everybody needs to do certain things if you belong to the category they're targeting. And again, as we go back to the one of the initial points we made, there's really not a whole lot of discernment as far as what the personal needs are, because the fact that a woman is going through menopause doesn't mean she necessarily needs to moisturize, or doesn't mean that she needs to moisturize as frequently as another woman. It's very, very bizarre.
You know, if you talk about product development, you know, I've spoken to many people in product development, and it usually starts with a concept. They get an idea, like, where can we fill a niche, right?
Yes.
And in this case, it was the menopause. So they come up with this idea, and then they come up with what they want the product to look like. They get on the phone with R&D, right? Research and development. This is where your cosmetic chemists are. And I've spoken to cosmetic chemists, and they tell me, the ones in the major, you know, bigger companies, that a lot of them, what they do is they take their base formulations, which have been in existence for decades, some of them. They take them off the shelf. These are well-formulated moisturizers. Of course. And they tweak them. They might add an ingredient here or there to, again, satisfy the claim. But the base formula is very similar. They come up with prototypes. They test them. They have a budget. They know what kind of their packaging is going to look like. And, you know, they test it. And, of course, they do some stability testing, right? They want to make sure. But, again, these products, a lot of these base formulations have been tested time and true. So some of the testing is minimal because they've tested them in the past.
Of course.
And then they put them on the shelves. But the bottom line is, it's the consumer that is coming up with the idea, the concept. How these companies have focus groups. They invite women in and they talk to them like what they need, where their needs are. So the consumer is actually coming up with these ideas. And as a business, the companies are fulfilling the needs of the consumer. And that's sort of how it works. It's not like there's a great revelation in science.
Of course.
Cosmetic chemists, they haven't had any great revelation for decades, maybe since the alpha hydroxy acids. We're talking back in the 80s or 90s. There's really not been anything really earth-shadowing, you know, in the last 2 decades as far as formulation of moisturizers.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, where's there to go really with those revelations? I mean, I think we've gotten pretty effectively with petroleum jelly, or with the cadre of so-called moisturizers that we have now. What else are you going to achieve through cosmetics? And this is, again, as you aptly said, cosmetics, not cosmeceuticals, not pharmaceuticals. They're designed to moisturize. What else are you going to do? Wrap yourself in saran wrap or something?
Change, right. Yes. Until the law changes, that's exactly where we're limited. So to get market share, you have to come up with a concept and find demand, and then, you know, obviously market to get that market share. And that's why the industry is growing. Add to that, again, our cultural messaging that we're inadequate the way we are, and that we need to look younger.
Right.
Look, you and I know, we don't know what causes aging, right? We can come up with the what is it called? The glycation theory. We have the Hayflick theory. We have the antioxidant theory. We have the senescence theory. We have 4, 5, 6 really good theories of aging. We don't know why we age. But the cosmetic industry, their cosmetics, have it all figured out. They know how to do the anti-aging thing. So you know, it's business, it's marketing, and I get that, but we need to educate the consumer about it.
Yes, and it's so amazing that you noted the fact that these are all theories, meaning there is no clear proof that any of these things are actually the it factor, or they actually contribute significantly to that. Then you were talking about the cosmetic industry possessing the secret knowledge of curing aging. I think that there's an element of Gnosticism here, where they actually claim to possess the secret knowledge to the key to the kingdom, and only they possess it. And the packaging is so interesting because that often comes hand in hand with some sort of a scam of exploiting someone's gullibility or someone's ignorance. And I think they make good use of that. And it's not to denigrate anybody in the general population so much as they really don't have the access or the bandwidth to access the knowledge that would help them parse through all that noise that comes out of the cosmetics industry, which it's mind-boggling sometimes to see it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but look, these are cosmetics that aren't designed to change anything. We don't know what causes aging. I know it, you know it, and they know it, but they're a business. Look, they happen to make some good products too. You know, again, it's not all bad. It's just the marketing has gone bad, and the consumer's not educated. It's like perfect storm. We have a consumer base that's not knowledgeable. We have an obsession with celebrity status, right? So they're following the messaging. and we have businesses that want to make a buck, and it's
Sure.
just the perfect storm for this. And that's our reality.
Sure, sure. And I think that a lot of the contribution to that recently has been the advent and explosion of social media, where you can actually doctor photos and images very easily. And before that, there was airbrush and then Photoshop, and now there's basically AI generated doctoring of photos, and the expectations are absolutely ridiculous. Besides the fact that nobody really minds the imperfections that much. Just to clarify, but those demands or those expectations are being pushed to the max and to very dangerous limits, I think, by social media, and obviously a lot of it is promoted by skincare corporations.
It's a business.
Yes.
And they're good at what they do. So again, I think a democracy works when we have an educated consumer base, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to educate.
For sure.
With your help, we get the education out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what would be your recommendation for a person who comes into your clinic and asks you, hey, Dr. Frey, how do I treat my skin? How do I take care of my skin on the very fundamental basic level?
So I'm talking about people without inflammatory skin conditions, and
Yes.
just healthy skin advice. Again, not the sexy answer. I tell people if they're overweight, I said lose weight. I said this is not. I'm not trying to be mean. I said it's good for you to be a normal BMI.
Yes.
Get yourself exercise, eat a healthy diet, and there's more and more evidence that adequate sleep even helps weight loss, and it's good for you. Don't take life too seriously. That's where the levity comes in. I said if you're dry. And you'll be flaky and dry. If you're dry, a good, well-formulated moisturizer, and I have a whole database of them on the website on FryFace. I am a big proponent of sunscreen. I'm not I know some of my colleagues avoid sun at all costs. That's not me. I say go outside and enjoy yourself. I have no problem with being outdoors. I do try to minimize midday sun. And I do wear sunscreen on exposed skin, and I do try to stay covered midday, only because I see personally, and every woman I see in my office, the difference between unexposed skin and exposed skin, the tone and texture. If you look at exposed skin and unexposed skin, you can see what that sunshine is doing to the skin as far as tone and texture is concerned. But I think sunscreen's not 100%. And I do believe protect your face, your hands, where 3 million skin cancers occur every year. I think it would behoove people to protect themselves. That's my recommendation. I don't encourage very much else. I just don't find the need for it. I don't think people need to be spending their time, energy, and money on most of those products.
Yes, absolutely. And what's really interesting is that you actually touched on a point that people try to that tiptoe around, which is weight loss. And what I noticed that being in the right BMI, or having average body weight, or not so much average, but the desired body weight, actually helps a lot with regards to skincare and problems around the skin, especially around the skin folds. Those can become very irritable, very sensitive in people who are overweight. That can also drive certain skin conditions and make them worse. And it's such an important recommendation. And I think it's so important to talk about this. And there's nothing mean about it. You want what's best for that patient, letting them know that losing weight, which they may not even know, it's not necessarily an intuitive thing. They may not connect 1 and 2, and you're helping them make that connection. I think that's a terrific thing a terrific point to make.
Yeah, thanks. Look, the problem is there's a lot of body shaming amongst people who are overweight, and part of our culture is like you're worthless unless you're really thin, a size 0. I think that's wrong too. Nobody has to be a size 0, but to be a healthy weight, our bones are built to maintain a certain weight. When you put on weight, your bones don't get stronger. Your joints go. It's bad for the pericardium, the fat around the heart. There's just so many unhealthy reasons to be overweight. And it is a tough subject, and it's not easy to lose weight. I feel bad. It's tough. I don't know whether it's the food. That's a whole another chapter for you. But,
of course,
I don't know whether it's the food or the stresses of society. I don't know. It's not my expertise, but I do know being a healthy weight is good for your skin, and it's good for you. And
yes.
So I do try to mention it. And I tell people to try to lose weight and to get help. They don't have to do it alone. There are plenty of programs or doctors they can do it. But like you said, there are plenty of conditions that are exacerbated by being overweight. The fold inflammations, Fat itself has its own metabolism. People who are very, very fat get conditions. Hidradenitis is a perfect one. Acanthosis nigricans. Because fat is it has its own metabolism, and so there are conditions that, again, people who are very heavy are much more prone to.
Absolutely.
And it's not the sexy answer. Again, I know it's not the quick fix. It's not easy, but it's the right answer.
No, it's not easy. But what I found is that actually the people who come into the office that I counsel about losing weight, they've been nothing but very understanding. And a lot of them actually let out a sigh of relief when I tell them that, because nobody else is telling them that. People shy away from talking about these things. And I'm so happy to hear that you would actually take that step and counsel your patient. I think that shows truly caring about that person's well-being, because you're actually counseling them about something that would make their skin a whole lot better and would make their general health much better, and would improve things beyond the scope of this conversation. This is very important.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Again, it's not an easy topic to broach, but it's the right thing. And it does have to do with skin health on top of your body health. And unlike you, my patients are usually very receptive.
Yes. Now, another thing that I read in your book was the discussion regarding sunscreen and the coral reefs. I'd love to hear more from you about that.
Oh, well, that's a big one. I had the pleasure of communicating with Terry Hughes. Terry Hughes is a scientist down in Australia. He has more citations on coral reef science probably than any person on the planet. He probably has near 40,000 citations. This is his life work on coral reef health. And, this assumption that oxybenzone, one of the filters for sunscreen, is unhealthy for the coral reef is almost laughable. Coral reef bleaching, if you don't know what it is, the coral reef has got algae, and when it's unhealthy, the algae leaves the coral and leaves the coral white, which is not good for the coral. Every time this has happened, according to him, in the past several decades, it always equates to warm waters. Now, whether that's global warming or pollution, I don't know. He would answer best. But it's clearly not from sunscreen filters. And the science, we talked about not great science. The science that was used to determine that oxybenzone is bad for the coral reef there's a study I know out of Italy, and another that was done in artificial setting. One was actually plastic bags of salt water with 1-day-old larvae coral, and they added high concentrations, or higher than what you'd find in the ocean, which is parts per trillion. They were parts per billion in this plastic bag. The conclusion of one of the studies was 10% of the coral reefs might be affected. And somehow that got blown out to be oxybenzone is bad for the coral reef. The Keys and Hawaii and a few places banned oxybenzone. Now, of course, if you're a maker of sunscreen, you can't use oxybenzone, not because it's so terrible, but because the consumer doesn't want it. Remember, here comes media. Right. They say, oh, your sunscreen is killing the coral reef. The consumer doesn't know the science. They never talked to Terry Hughes. And so they're not buying oxybenzone sunscreens. And so companies have to make products that don't have oxybenzone in it. The problem with that is there's only 2 or 3 really decent sunscreen filters in the United States that protect against UVA, long wavelength sunscreen. Avobenzone is one, which is in there, but it's a very unstable molecule. So it has to be accompanied by something called oxaloxate, for example. Oxybenzone, which isn't being used anymore. Or we have one of the mineral sunscreens, zinc oxide can also cover UVA. But again, the consumer doesn't know this. And the manufacturers are now making sunscreens that aren't as protective of UVA, because the consumer won't buy oxybenzone because of bad studies and politics that have made that the cause of the coral reef. Right. So it's a terrible scenario. This is another example where the consumer drives the industry based on bad science. And when you talk to the guys who are really studying it, they said the advantage of oxybenzone certainly outweighs not having it in their sunscreens. And it's likely has nothing to do with coral reef bleaching. But this is how the industry works. Again, the consumer is driving the industry. And, again, it's going to take education. And I've spoken to representatives at manufacturers of some really good sunscreens. The sunscreen I was using, the stick sunscreen, I loved. And they discontinued it because it had oxybenzone in it. I was so annoyed. I said, why? They go, because it's not selling. I said, it's aesthetically pleasing. It works great. It's available. They didn't care. They just discontinued it because it wasn't selling, because it had oxybenzone in it. So listen, this is just another example of how the consumer, the uneducated consumer, is driving the industry.
That's amazing, and I think it started. So it's almost a giant stampede that started on hearsay, and it basically culminated in what you're describing, where you have to give up your favorite sunscreen stick. It's pretty incredible, and a lot of it I think is media driven, probably to generate
Yes.
some stories and some revenue on the ad back end there, whatever it is that they're doing. It's so bizarre, some of these things, how they start off on nothing and end up where they are.
Yeah, it is. It was media driven. You know, you do this study, it's just okay. And then and by the way, the guys that sponsored the study in Italy were the like Coral Reef Safety Association. You know, of
Yeah.
course, they were a biased opinion to begin with, but
Yeah, that's a
but the
surprise.
media wants ratings and ad dollars, and so they put it out there. You know, is your sunscreen causing coral reef bleaching? It's not good for the oceans, of course, and then all the do-gooders, you know, people who want to take care of the oceans, like, okay, no more oxybenzone. And so now they have to put up with products that aren't as good, but they don't know that.
Right, right. So to someone who's shopping around and looking for a great skincare products, I know that your website does actually recommend some skincare products.
Yeah.
And so what are you basing your recommendations on, and what are some examples?
So the database is nationally and internationally known brands, not because every product that every brand makes is great, but the moisturizers we've tested. So the overwhelming majority of moisturizers on that website have been tested with corneometry. We make sure they work. That's how I got started. The sunscreens, I do not have the ability to test sunscreens. You need, you know, minimal erythema dose. I don't have a lab set up for that.
Mm-hmm.
So for those recommendations, it's based on independent review, like Consumer Reports and other independent studies on efficacy of sunscreens. Mm-hmm. And so that's basically what's on the website. And again, these are nationally, internationally known brands that are safe, effective, because they've been tested so by companies, and also the efficacy based on what we found in our office. And they're affordable. These are just ones you can find at your local drugstore. Again, I don't sell anything.
Yes. Define affordable. What do you categorize as affordable?
Oh, you can buy 16 ounces of a body moisturizer for $12.
Mm-hmm.
Sunscreens anywhere from 10. I think there's some of the La Roche-Posays are a little more expensive on the site, but they're very elegant. Probably about $25. Mm-hmm. So in that range, you're not going to find, you know, $500 an ounce moisturizers on the site. It's not going there.
Yes, that doesn't make the cuts.
No.
Yes. What are your recommendations for makeup brands, if you have any specific ones in mind?
I say go down to the local drugstore. A lot of the makeup houses make sunscreen for name brands, put them in name brand packaging, and with the leftover that's, they sell it to the less expensive ones. Mm-hmm. And I have nothing against makeup. It's fun. I say it's like sprinkles on an ice cream cone. It's colorful. It's fun to play with, but it's not going to change the ice cream, nor is it going to change the cone. Mm-hmm. Again, if you want to have fun with it, have fun with it, but keep it in perspective. And I tell the women, stop facing the mirror and start facing the world, because you'll be really much happier.
Yes. Yeah. And are there any specific consistencies or formulations of makeup that you recommend or like better than others?
I think it's personal preference, unless you have allergies to things. You know, mm-hmm. People who have allergies, I think the solid formulations are probably less allergenic than the liquid versions. But again, for healthy people, I think inexpensive name brands at drugstores is totally adequate.
Yeah. Yes. Now, as far as, so we did touch earlier on some specialty areas of the body, and we talked about the eye cream versus the face cream. What would you say about the state of hair care nowadays, and what are some of your recommendations for people coming into your clinic for that?
So again, healthy hair, it's aesthetic. You know, again, we talked about shampoo not being available more than 60 years ago. Mm-hmm. People use soap. You don't have to shampoo. There's a whole no poo campaign. You can just wash your hair with water. Mm-hmm. But shampoo is designed to remove things, and it's designed to improve the manageability of hair. That's really what, you know, shampoo surfactants, which are the ingredients that lift dirt and oil and sebum off the scalp. So I'm talking about people with healthy scalps, not scaly scalps. That's a separate issue. Mm-hmm. A healthy scalp, it's personal preference. Some people prefer to, shampoo every day. Others every other day, and some people can get away with once a week. And again, you have these no poo campaign people who are never using shampoo on their scalp. They're just washing with water. Yes. So it really is personal preference. There's no proven health benefit to shampooing your hair if you have a healthy scalp.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And you know what's amazing is that a lot of people coming into my practice, we have this discussion, and the responses, as you can imagine, and you've probably experienced yourself many times, are ranging from being staggered through dismissive. And what's amazing is a lot of people worry about their scalp becoming oily once they withdraw from shampooing. But my take and my experience has been that the chicken is actually shampooing in most of the cases. In fact, I'd say the vast majority of cases, the scalp actually, especially in healthy scalps, produces that excess oil in response to repeated shampooing. And once you back away from it for 2 or 3 weeks, the scalp realizes it's no longer under attack and stabilizes and evens out oil production. And what I've had with people who dare take that leap of faith, that plunge, they actually come back in a few weeks later and they're as happy as clams. But before that, they're like, "Oh my God, my scalp is going to fall apart if I don't shampoo."
Yeah, I've looked at that science. I can't find any science that shows there's any sort of feedback regulation to increasing oil production to something on the surface. Remember, the oil is millimeters below the surface of the skin in the sebaceous gland. Shampoos are designed, a lot of them with sodium lauryl sulfate, which I like. It's a great foaming, it's a great cleansing, but it could also be an allergen.
Yes.
So, but it's a good cleanser. Again, I think a lot of it has to do with how it leaves your hair. It's manageable. It's a user experience thing. It's not a health thing. And that's what I tell my patients. If you're happy with your hair without exposing yourself to all this stuff, fine. Same with conditioning. Conditioning is the opposite. It's designed to coat the hair, again, to leave it more manageable. It's not designed to remove things. That's what the shampoo is for.
Right.
So it's a lot of personal preference. It's a business. It's just another. Hair care is huge. It probably constitutes about a third of the beauty industry now. It's big.
Yes. And what are your thoughts about nail care? And are there any things that people should completely avoid doing to their nails? And what's the best nail care for basic nail care?
Yeah, I think moisturize. Look, you moisturize the cuticle to grow out the nail. Nail is keratin. It's dead tissue, just like hair, right? You can cut it. It's not going to feel anything. Again, people say cut your nails, it'll grow faster. There's no feedback mechanism. There's no way the tip of the nail communicates with the nail matrix where the nail grows to stimulate the more nail growth. It's just there's no science there to prove that's the case.
No.
Same with cutting the hair. You can cut the hair. It's not going to make your hair grow faster. There's no feedback way to hair to know it's cut. So moisturizing, if people complain that nails are dry, and I think petroleum jelly is probably the best, moisturize those nails for that.
Yep.
I am a little concerned with women who go to the get a manicure and they're using those gels and they're sticking their hands under the UV lights. So I worry about excessive UV light exposure. I tell women to use sunscreen and or wear gloves with just their fingers showing if they want to do that. That's probably my only real concern. And again, the rest is pretty much aesthetic.
Got it. Yep. That sums it up. That's great. Well, Dr. Frey, it was great to talk to you. And before we head out, how do people find you? What sort of social media links and what's the address of your website?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn, Fayne Frey. It's Fayne Frey, Frey. Fryface is the website, FRYFACE.com. I have a contact us through that. Fryface also has an Instagram and a Facebook page, and I encourage everybody to follow us there.
All right, and thank you very much for being here and for discussing skincare with me.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Let's keep educating, and thank you so much.
Absolutely.